Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. My name is Victoria Rocha. I'm the assistant to the city manager and public information officer for the City of Duarte. You are here today for our Foothill Fire Safety and Preparation Seminar, on which we have a lot of great speakers joining us today to talk about all the ways that you can keep you and your family and your property safe, because we do live in a high fire area. And one of the reasons we wanted to record this is because we know that this is kind of what we call an evergreen topic. This is something that comes up every year, especially as we're heading into fire season with the summer season. We know it's been rainy. That means that there's more vegetation out there, which is beautiful, but also could make for a hazard depending on how it's handled. So for those who know other people who maybe couldn't make it tonight, please know that this recording will be on the city's YouTube page moving forward. So to introduce our speakers, we have with us Assistant Chief Trevor Moore with Los Angeles County Fire. For those of you who don't know, Duarte is a contract city, so we contract with LA County Fire for all of our fire services. We also have Senior Management Analyst Mackenzie Bolger with the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments. This is ultimately a regional issue, especially for our foothill cities. So we have the COG here because they are looking at this from a regional perspective and offering some tools to our neighbors in addition to us. We have Public Safety Manager Larry Brasida with the City of Duarte, who I get to work with closely every day, and it's awesome. And then last we have our Outreach Analyst, Armini Sargsian. I said that right? Okay. And she's with the California Department of Insurance, again, to talk about another hot topic, because obviously living in a high fire zone area, insurance is important. It's a part of keeping everything safe. So everyone knows, I've introduced them in the order in which they're going to present. What that means is once I bring up the slides, we will have Assistant Chief Moore presenting first. They're just gonna, as soon as he's done, the presenters will move through those slides. There won't be introductions in between. We won't take any questions either in between. We're gonna let all the presenters go. So be storing up those questions and what you may wanna ask. Once the presenters are finished, you can either put your questions into the Q&A chat and I will read your question out loud, or you may use the raise your hand function and I will ask you to unmute yourself. You'll ask your question and then I will mute you and the question will be answered. If you have a follow-up question, you will need to raise your hand again or place your question into the Q&A box. So turning this over then now to Assistant Chief Trevor Moore. Let me share the slides.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Trevor Moore, LA County Fire. I work in the Forestry Division. I work with communities in the very high severity zone for fire prevention. Tonight, you guys are going to get a lot of great information that's going to be focused on fire prevention against wildfire. I'm going to focus on home hardening. Go ahead, next slide. So home hardening, what is it? What we're trying to do is harden the home against ember cast fires. Typically, we've thought about flames engulfing and pushing the structures and then catching the house on fire. But what we know now is these ember cast fires where the embers are flying in the air, they're landing on and around the structure and they're igniting the home. So we have 4 categories for home hardening. The first category is roof and rain gutters. The second category is ember entry points. The third category, hazards within 5 feet, that's zone 0. And then the fourth is defensible space, that's the 5 feet and beyond. Next slide. First off, we've got roof and rain gutters. Your roof has the greatest exposure to fire embers, so it poses one of the greatest risks to ember cast fires. You need a Class A roof. That's asphalt shingles, cement shingles, metal, clay, but not wood. You want to check any cracks or gaps in the roofs where embers could get in. With all the rain that we've had, you might want to make sure if you've had any leaks in the roof, that could be an area where an ember could get in as well. Cleanliness of the roof is important. You want to clean the channels, the crevices, the nooks and crannies, free of any debris, leaf litter, or pine needles. Then you want to go to the rain gutters, inspect and clean, remove any ignitable material. Inspect your roof annually. We always recommend once before summer and then always in, Santa Ana season, so October. Next slide. The next category is ember entry points. There are many ember entry points that we can fortify on your house. We can fortify the windows, the exterior doors, the garage doors, chimneys, open eaves, and vents. Next slide. First off, we've got windows, doors, and eaves. You can see in the picture here where these are all the areas where embers can enter the house. If possible, you want to use multi-pane tempered glass windows. Clean any combustible materials 0 to 5 feet from in front of windows that could ignite and compromise the windows. A lot of times they'll catch on fire and then pop and crack the windows, and now embers can get into the home. You want to look at exterior doors. Make sure the thresholds and the weather stripping is airtight. Garage doors. We want no cracks or gaps in the doors or the sill. You might consider replacing old doors easily manipulated by strong winds. Open eaves. You want to caulk and paint and plug any cracks or gaps in the under eaves of the structure. That way we don't get embers coming into the attic. Next slide. Vents. You want to locate all the vents on your home. The dormer vents, the ridge vents, the roof vents, attic vents, gable vents, under the eave vents, and then crawl spaces. These vents are usually covered with a standard 1/4-inch screen or a mesh metal screen. You're going to want to upgrade those to the 1/8-inch or smaller metal screen or prefabricated spark arrestor cover with grates and baffles to maximize protection against ember intrusion. No need to remove the old screens. You can, in most cases, just add to the existing vent and cover the old one with the new screen or bolt a new cover over the old one. Next slide. Next category is zone 0. That's the 0 to 5 feet from your structure. Now we know that this is the critical zone. So I always try to think about, how does the wind hit your house? Does the wind hit a section of your house where it captures the wind? I call this the catcher's mitt. If embers are being thrown at your home, how will those embers collect on or against the structure? Therefore, it's important to remove all combustible materials that are in the 0 to 5 feet boundary of your home. If you have firewood, outdoor furniture, wood mulch, combustible vegetation, debris, or litter, if these things can catch fire in zone 0, they will likely spread to your home. Next slide. Within zone 0, it's key to keep it lean, clean, and green. Get vegetation away from the structure. Clean up any dead and down. Many plants look green on the outside, but have dead material inside and underneath, susceptible to embers and can easily ignite. It's all about maintenance. If it's highly combustible, get it out of the 0 to 5 zone. If you have attachments to your homes, like fences, decks, arbors, they can be a hazard as well. If attached to the home, keep it clean of vegetation and collect no debris. Keep maintained with caulked and sealed and non-combustible. Use metal flashing against the structures and attachments where embers could land and build up. You want to make sure there's no trees touching your roof and keep them 10 feet from the roof line. Next slide. So then we have the 0 feet to 30 feet and beyond. And you can see in this picture here, it's just a little scale of how you want to space the vegetation After that 0 to 5 feet, you want more spacing between the vegetation in that 0 to 30 feet. This is creating defensible space, and it improves the chances of your home surviving a wildfire. Proper spacing on your property creates less fuel continuity and slows the rate of spread of the fire with less flame intensity. Defensible zone is all about maintenance. Weed whip the areas with dried out weeds, keep plants spaced, clean and green, free of dead material that could easily ignite. Next slide. So I always say focus on home hardening. Focus on your home and then work your way out. Look at your roof and your gutters, your eaves and your vents, windows and doors, then that 0 to 5 feet, zone 0, then the 0 to 30 feet and beyond. The more proactive you are with your space, with hardening your home and defensible space, the more you improve the chances of your home surviving a wildfire. And that's it for me in the home hardening.
All right, great. Thank you, Assistant Chief Moore. I'll jump in now. So thank you all for joining us tonight, and thank you to the City of Duarte for inviting us to present and join in the conversation. My name is Mackenzie Bolger. I'm a Senior Management Analyst at the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments, and tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about the Fire Prep San Gabriel Valley program. Next slide. So the San Gabriel Valley COG is a regional government agency, and we support initiatives within the San Gabriel Valley cities and unincorporated communities doing outreach around wildfire preparedness and adaptation. And so we have a lot of different outreach activities. We engage at community events. We do workshops and webinars like we are tonight. And other presentations, and we provide educational materials to residents of the San Gabriel Valley. Next slide. So these are a few examples of the types of resources we've created and which are available to you on our website, which is sgvcog.org/wildfires. We'll have this also on a slide coming up, so you can take a look there. But these types of resources include a personal or household wildfire action plan, an adaptation and prevention guide, and a neighborhood wildfire action plan that you can utilize to engage with your neighbors around preparedness. Next slide. Throughout some of our outreach, we've found also and heard a need for a regional approach, as Victoria mentioned. And this is really given that no one community would be affected on their own by future wildfires, that it really is a regional issue. And so this spring, actually, we're launching the development of a community wildfire protection plan process that's going to involve community members and stakeholders. And the consultant team we're working with will be conducting hazard and risk analysis, helping cities in the area develop an action plan, and then also supporting regional and local preparedness and evacuation needs as well. So we're really excited to get this started, and make sure to check out our website as we continue to add more information on this process. Next slide. All right, so the Fire Prep SGV program we launched last summer, and as I mentioned, it's really been had the goal of providing education around wildfire preparedness to residents in the area. This is our website where you can access more of those educational materials, and yeah, definitely go check that out and download some of the documents. Next slide. So this is a map that notes the very high fire hazard severity zones in the San Gabriel Valley. The red are those that are local responsibility areas. The pink is state responsibility areas, which are just different ways of who's kind of responsible for fire protection in those areas. And if you can see, Duarte there in the middle is really surrounded by very high fire hazard severity zones, and parts of the city are definitely in those zones as well. As are kind of all the foothill communities from La Cañada all the way to Claremont in the San Gabriel Valley. And so really after the Bobcat fire in 2020, many of these communities in the foothills and throughout the San Gabriel Valley expressed interest in more wildfire preparedness and protection efforts, which really launched the Fire Prep SGV program. So we have a couple of upcoming resources and events for you to be on the lookout for. This spring, we're going to be releasing a Firewise landscaping guide. This is focused on what kinds of plants and vegetation you'll want to have and maintain on your property that are safe and resilient with wildfires risk. And then we're also going to have a homeowners and renters guide relating to wildfire insurance. And then we're also planning a climate change and wildfire summit probably later in the summer. Again, all of these will be available on our website. And actually right now, you can head to our website and check out our most recent event, which was the Firewise landscaping topic. So if you'd like to check out that as a resource and learn more, you can hear from LA County, some folks from LA County, and then also the US Green Business Council or Green Building Council on firescaping. Next slide. Okay, so, oh, and you can click through. I think there's an animation. Yeah, okay. You can just click through. So they're all there, all the questions. But we'll talk a little bit more about evacuation preparedness. And so the first step in evacuation preparedness is really developing a disaster plan and working through these answers or these questions with your household. And all of this is within the resources on our website. But a couple of questions that you'll want to answer with your household is where you and your family members will meet if you're leaving from different locations, or where you'll go if you're all together. Identifying an individual or individuals that you'll keep in touch with about your status, somebody who lives outside of the area. Identifying whether you have somewhere you can go. There might be community or regional evacuation centers within Duarte or within the San Gabriel Valley, but it might be good also to identify family members out of the area that you can stay with in the event of a wildfire or other emergency. You'll want to think about, you can go back. Yeah. You'll want to think about care for children or elderly grandparents or pets in your household. What kinds of additional supports might you need to make sure that they're all cared for? What are some of the safest and most reliable routes out of your neighborhood in the event of a wildfire? Do you have reliable transportation? Do you keep your gas tank full? Or if you don't have a car, do you have reliable alternatives, neighbors that can help get you where you need to go? Do you have a grab and go bag for all of those in your household? And we'll also talk about what that looks like in the next slide. And then have you practiced your evacuation plan with those in your household? So it's good to run through all of these questions. And then, as I mentioned, these are available in the resources on our website as well. Next slide. All right, so I won't necessarily run through all of these, but you'll want to have grab and go bags for your home, for your car, maybe one to have at work or at school, so that wherever you are in the event of a wildfire, if you need to evacuate, you have what you need for yourself and for those around you for several days. So some of these might be a flashlight or a headlamp and batteries, backup keys, cash, medications for at least 3 days, extra shoes and socks and clothing, a hat or a jacket. Next slide. You might also want to have toiletry items for all members of the family. Those might look different if you have grandparents in the home, if you have young children in the home. You'll need to be thinking about their specific needs. You'll want copies of important documents, birth certificates, and that kind of thing. First aid is always good to have. And then you'll want a separate bag or tote that can hold water and snacks that are shelf stable and non-perishable as well. Next slide. So before you leave, you'll want to make sure that you shut off your circuit box and your gas valve. There's some instructions on this slide for how to do that based on the type that you have. Next slide. If you turn off your gas, or to turn off your gas, you'll need to have a wrench handy. So that's something that you would want to have available as well. Just a note, you will need to have your gas turned back on by a technician. And you can also contact your gas provider to see whether your home has an automatic shut-off valve. Next slide. All right, so you have your plan, you have your go bags. What is next? So you want to keep informed. You want to make sure that you're currently receiving updates from the city and from other local authorities. You want to make sure that you've talked with your neighbors about evacuation preparedness as well. And you want to make sure that you've run through your plan and have double checked your checklist with your household to be ready in the event of an emergency. Next slide. So the City of Duarte might also have alerts or some sort of alert system. I think that might be talked about in upcoming slides. You'll definitely want to make sure that you're aware of incident alerts from CAL FIRE and also LA County. So here's a couple of links directly to those websites for you to sign up for text messages or other communications so that you can stay on top of anything that's taking place nearby relating to wildfire. And then we can go to my last slide. All right, well, thank you all again. Hopefully this information was helpful. Again, all of what I talked about is available on our website. And then you can feel free to email me at this email address if you have any more specific questions. Otherwise, we'll chat during the Q&A time.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Mackenzie. I appreciate that presentation. Now we're going to move on to more specifics, and that particularly is going to be with the City of Duarte. So you kind of heard from the different law enforcement services, fire services, as far as LA County is concerned, as well as from the COG that kind of represents multiple agencies surrounding the City of Duarte. So now I'm going to get into a little bit more of the specifics as it relates to the Duarte residents and how you may or may not be affected by a wildfire or situation for being prepared. So if we can go to the first slide. There's a couple of different things that the City of Duarte addresses, and a lot of that is going to be done with code enforcement as well as our Duarte Municipal Code and adopting LA County codes. So in our codes, as we have it today, it states that all properties, both commercial and residential, are required to be basically nuisance free. Anything that affects one neighbor or another neighbor or surrounding neighbors can be considered a public nuisance, because if it affects one or more, that can be a public safety issue. So we ask that not only for visibility concern, keeping vegetation green, as we heard Assistant Fire Chief Moore state, as long as you keep it green as well as maintained, have that spacing available on your property, it can make a huge difference on how susceptible you are or your property is to a wildfire situation. So keeping your vegetation healthy, growing condition, as well as having your irrigation system operational, working, not broken, that can make a huge difference. And not only did I mention our Duarte Municipal Code, but we did adopt the LA County Code. So when the fire inspectors go out to your property, if you're located in one of the Foothill areas, and the fire inspectors come out there and advise you that you need to increase your defensible space area by removing some vegetation or weeding out some of that area, it is adopted by the Duarte Municipal Code. So when they do say that you need to do so, it is important that you comply with those orders. Going on to our next slide, here are some of the code sections. Now, the Public Safety Office receives many different calls as it relates to the maintenance of properties, as it relates to maybe even some of the fire inspectors that go out there to your particular property in the city of Duarte and say, I don't know what to do. Why are we being asked to do this, etc. I think Assistant Chief Moore has given you guys a lot of information and education material on why that's really important, because it does help alleviate a lot of your hazards on the property and make your property more defensible. So it is important that we comply with that. Now, some of our Duarte municipal codes that we have is our 932 section, which basically states maintenance of a property can have overgrown vegetation or existence of weed, rubbish, or any material or substance, gas, or compounds, which can catch fire or be a fire hazard, is a violation of our Duarte municipal code. So one of the things that Assistant Chief Moore mentioned was your 0 to 30, for example, the space surrounding your home, making sure that your vegetation is kept clear and that sort of thing. Another thing that we have is other items. So if you have, for example, a property that has tires, car batteries, just a pile of vegetation, anything of that sort, when you're collecting those items on your property, that can constitute a fire hazard as well as additional problems. So it is important that you make sure that you keep your property clean and clear of those issues, because you don't want those things to catch fire. As you heard earlier, just a small amber that can get through a vent space in your attic or under your eaves can create a severe issue for you and catch your home on fire. Same thing is true when you have all those substances located on your property directly. So in the city of Duarte, we have code enforcement officers that identify those situations and we educate our residents. So if you or your neighbors perhaps have a situation like this where there is an abundance amount of weeds, rubbish, or material substances that can catch fire, it is very important that you let us know those situations exist, because that situation could lead to their home catching on fire as well as yours if you are a neighboring property and others in the neighborhood. So it is important that we make sure that we work as a community together to identify those problems, talk to your neighbors, educate them. If they didn't attend today's meeting and briefing, please let them know about this. It's going to be on the YouTube channel like it was mentioned earlier today. So it is important that they have this information so they understand what's happening. Another thing that we have is maintaining landscape and vegetation. So it is important, not only do you have your vegetation, but also your irrigation system. So part of keeping landscape and vegetation healthy and growing and thriving, not only trimming your vegetation, but also making sure that it has proper irrigation, making sure that it's being watered and fed. So if we have all those systems in place, then we can make sure that we have an aesthetic pleasing property, as well as a property that is going to be more resilient to fire situation. Next slide, please. Now, some of the things that we talked about having property maintained properly. We do have a program called the Local Harvest here in the city of Duarte. And basically what it is we have a team volunteers that come out to your property and they will pick all your ripe fruit. Now, all the fruit that is picked will be donated to the Foothill Unity Center. So those that are in need of that type of food source will be given it. And we do that on Thursdays after 4 p.m. If you'd like to sign up for that program, there's a phone number that we have here, as well as an email address. Please feel free to reach out and contact us so we can schedule that pickup. And that's just another way, a mechanism that we have to assist residents in maintaining their vegetation and that sort of thing, and also do a good deed. It's very important that we try to help our community as much as humanly possible. Next slide. Now, one thing in particular, Mackenzie has mentioned about having a go bag, having that information, the education, and all that stuff is absolutely fantastic. Now, one thing in particular that we have in the city of Duarte is the Community Emergency Response Team. Now, we also call this CERT. So the CERT team is basically a training program that we provide residents in the city of Duarte on light search and rescue, on CPR and first aid. I'll get into some of the more specifics in a second, but there's a lot of life-saving education that we provide to all residents, and particularly if you have a disaster, and let's just say a major earthquake or wildfire in this situation, you have all your firefighters, you have all your law enforcement services are going to be responding to that situation. And honestly, resources are scarce, especially when you have a major incident. Law enforcement and fire services cannot be everywhere at once. So it is important that we try to be as educated as much as we humanly can. And that's why we provide this type of training program. So this program gives residents the education and the ability to understand and how they can respond to a situation, whether it be in their own household, as well as in their neighborhoods and community. Next slide, please. Some of the things that we teach in our program is disaster preparedness, CERT organization, disaster psychology, terrorism, and CERT, as well as medical operations, light search and rescue, and just basic fire safety. So there's a whole training protocol that we go through to educate residents, and that is our basic CERT training. So if you would like to attend our basic CERT training, I highly recommend and encourage it. We also have, after you take the basic program, we also have an advanced program. Now, the advanced program is something that we take a lot of pride in. That is when we have our advanced term CERT members help us actually in day-to-day emergency operations. That can be a major traffic collision, that can be even a wildfire, or if we have to conduct evacuations. We have our CERT members actually are volunteers, and they come out and they help us. Again, these are members that are of the community. They're your neighbors, they're even you. So we have them come out, they help us, and they're doing a really good deed, and they're learning a lot of life safety skills, which is absolutely amazing. Not only do we have it just here in the city of Duarte, but we have an area partnership where we partner up with Glendora, Monrovia, Laverne, Azusa, Arcadia, Temple City, Rosemead, and we share our resources. So we allow our CERT members, our advanced CERT teams, to also participate in any disaster and or pre-planned events in those jurisdictions as well. So if there is a big bicycle event or a festival and they need street closures, we ask our CERT members if they'd like to help and assist in those closures, education materials, operate first aid booths. So there's a lot of opportunities for you to do a lot of good, not only for yourself and your family, but also for all your neighbors in the community. Next slide, please. So if you really like to sign up for our CERT team, I highly recommend you reach out to our program coordinator, Anthony Hadlock, and we can be reached at cert@accessduarte.com, at our phone number there. And highly recommend it if you're interested, if you want more information about it, if you would just like to talk to us more about it or what we can do, or if you'd like to find out when our next event is, please give us a call, let us know. We'd be more than happy to have you attend and give you as much information as humanly possible. Next slide, please. So we kind of talked about earlier in the presentation about items that are on your property and or complying with those orders given either by the LA County Fire Department and or possibly even you'd like to have more information yourself, please feel free to contact us. We're out of the Duarte Public Safety Office, which is also the Sheriff's Substation at 1042 Huntington Drive. That is located right next to Target. So if you go to Target on a daily basis or weekly or monthly or whatever, come on down and you'll see a bunch of the black and white police cars right in front. Feel free to come on in. Our office hours are Monday through Thursday, 7:30 to 6, and Friday through Saturday, 7:30 to 4. Now, don't be alarmed. You always have law enforcement services 365 days a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Those hours are just for the public. So don't feel like you can never contact or call 911 or call phone number and we won't be there. Those are just the hours that we are here to respond to the public in person. So if you have after hour situation and you'd like to contact us, just call Temple Station at 626-285-7171. And with that, I'll be waiting for questions, and that concludes my end of the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Duarte. My name is Armina Sarkisian. I'm an outreach analyst with the California Department of Insurance, and it is my pleasure to join you tonight to present on updates from the department on what we've been doing to make insurance available and affordable in your communities. Next slide, please. The Department of Insurance, I won't go over every detail of what we do, but just wanted to highlight 2 items here. We are essentially the largest consumer protection agency in the nation. We license every agent and broker that you work with, and we resolve consumer complaints. So I want to say, if you ever experience any type of insurance related issue, you have questions, we are the agency to reach out to. So please note our phone number, 1-800-927-4357. That is the number to call anytime you need assistance, or you could also visit us at insurance.ca.gov. And I'll mention these numbers again at the end. One thing that the Department of Insurance cannot do is we cannot require an insurance company to sell insurance to a particular person or a community. And unfortunately, this is a question that we receive time and time again. Can you help me get an insurance company to insure my home? Next slide, please. Since 2019, the department has actually met with consumers throughout the state who have been impacted by wildfire emergencies. And through those conversations, we've been able to enact some changes to make insurance available and affordable. Next slide, please. So we've been able to, since 2019, we've been able to remove certain barriers that prevented wildfire survivors from receiving those critical insurance benefits that they had paid into. For example, we've been able to expand evacuation expense coverage and extend the additional living expenses. Additionally, a law authored by then Senator Lara, who's now your insurance commissioner, went into effect in 2019. And this law provides you a 1-year moratorium from non-renewals for wildfire emergencies. Let's say Governor Newsom announces a wildfire emergency in your community. Your insurance company cannot non-renew for a year from that date. Additionally, we've been able to increase the non-renewal notice an insurance company gives you from 45 days to 75 days to give you an extra month to look for an alternative policy. Now, we realize in certain areas that are very high fire areas, it is difficult to find insurance through the traditional market. So for those of you who are experiencing those issues, know that there is this coverage called the FAIR Plan. Next slide, please. And the FAIR Plan essentially is a pool of all insurance companies licensed to do business in the state of California, essentially sharing the risk. They insure those properties that are in the high fire risk area. So we've been actually working towards making the FAIR Plan a fair policy for you. Unfortunately, currently there are some limitations, but very recently, actually about 2 weeks ago, we were able to announce coverage extensions through the FAIR Plan. The department has been hearing more and more from Californians throughout the state, especially those who are, especially those who own condos. So HOAs in general have been experiencing issues getting coverage for their properties. And so the FAIR Plan and the Department of Insurance worked very closely together to extend the HOA, so commercial coverage limits, to 20 million. This hasn't gone into full effect yet. The FAIR Plan actually has 60 days from that date to come up with how they're going to implement the extended coverage. So please be on the lookout for that. Additionally, the Department of Insurance mandated that the FAIR Plan provide comprehensive coverage along with its standard limited coverage that it currently provides. Unfortunately, the FAIR Plan decided to take us to court. So we are currently in the appeals process, but we essentially say we will not stop until this is a fair plan for everyone. We did hold an investigatory hearing last July, And we're constantly engaged with consumers throughout the state on this issue. Next slide, please. So that brings me to this Safer from Wildfires in 1, 2, 3 framework that we announced last year in January. And it is essentially an interagency partnership where we came together with all those agencies that you see on your screen to come up with action steps for consumers on what they can do to respond to wildfire emergencies, be ready, prepared to protect their homes, lives, businesses by reducing their wildfire risk, and in effect, making insurance cheaper. Next slide, please. And the Safer from Wildfires framework really is just actionable steps that you can take. And I know Assistant Chief Moore actually went over the home hardening aspect of it, so I will not go into too many details, but essentially these are recommendations for you, what you can do to harden your property. So first step is really protecting your individual structure. Again, taking note of what Assistant Chief Moore noted earlier. Next step, please. Next slide, please. The next step is protecting your immediate surroundings. So again, Assistant Chief Moore mentioned many of these. Next slide, please. And lastly, it is working together as a community. And we say this is key because by working together as a community, you can protect your entire community when it comes to wildfire risk. This does include FireWise community, where you come together with your neighbors to come up with an action plan. It does include your local jurisdictions. Next slide, please. And so, as I mentioned, the framework, these recommendations are hand in hand with the regulations that lower your insurance costs and increase transparency. So the department actually introduced these regulations last year. We introduced it in a public hearing held on April 13th, and the regulations actually were fully implemented by the Office of Administrative Law, it's a state agency, on October 14th of last year. So as of October, the regulations are in effect. And what do these regulations do? First of all, they require insurance companies to provide discounts to homeowners and businesses for hardening their properties. Secondly, you as a policyholder will now have access to your wildfire risk score. You may not be aware that your insurance company is already attaching a wildfire risk score to your property. It never is transparent. It never is sent to you. But now because of these regulations, you will receive that wildfire risk score, understand what goes into that, why your property was assigned that risk score. And lastly, you will have the right to appeal as a consumer if you do not agree with the risk determination score or if you take steps to harden your property. As you can see on your screen, it says today was actually the deadline for insurance companies to submit their plans to the Department of Insurance, how they're going to implement these regulations. Even though their law is of October 14th of last year, they haven't really gone into full effect because we had given the insurance industry time to submit their plans. So in the next few weeks, as you imagine, the department is going to be very busy looking through every submitted plan and make sure that it is in accordance with the law. And starting sometime this year, every California consumer should start receiving that wildfire risk score and start receiving discounts for actions, for home hardening actions. Next slide, please. So currently, about 40% of the insurance market is already providing discounts for home hardening. If you'd like to see that full list, you can visit our website, insurance.ca.gov. And also, if you're having trouble finding coverage for your property, there is also a home insurance finder tool on our website. That actually allows you to type in your zip code, and even there's a place for you to put a check mark to narrow it down to insurance companies that are writing in the high fire area. So please do visit our website because it does have a number of tools for you related to insurance. I believe I have one last slide. And that is the phone number again to our department's hotline, 1-800-927-4357. This number is answered by insurance experts Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have specific insurance related questions for your property. We can answer any type of question, and also we can take your complaints through that phone number as well, and of course our website as well. With that, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to your questions.
Wonderful. I am going to invite all of our panelists to come back, and we will get started on the Q&A portion from our attendees. Again, for those who came a little bit after I explained how this will work, if you have a question, you can either put it into Q&A, type it out, and then I will read it out loud if you're a little shy. Or if you'd like to say your question yourself, you can use the raise your hand function. I will invite you to unmute. You'll ask your question. There'll be answers. And if you have a follow-up question, you'll need to raise your hand again, and I will unmute you again. So opening this. Oh, yes.
Victoria, I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
And now this is a question just for you. How
Oh,
does
no.
somebody get more information about emergencies that are occurring in the city of Duarte? Is there a place that they
Oh,
can
very
sign up
good.
for,
Very
something
good.
like that?
Wonderful. So yes, as the city's PIO, Larry is lobbing me a softball here. We do put everything obviously on the website at access40.com, but more quickly, we would recommend that you sign up for Nixle, which is our emergency communications platform. You can actually do that through the website. It's a little bit faster if you go to access40.com. But that way you're getting, if it's an emergency where we need people to be paying attention, it'll be sent as a text message in addition to an email. But you'll also get emails just of general information. And many of you, I think, found out about this because we sent it out as a Nixle, because I have to say our numbers boosted right after I sent it out as a Nixle. But this also means it works. So if you have friends or family members who aren't signed up, you are the model citizen that needs to tell them to please sign up, and make sure that you're also following our social media as well. We put most of our information there as well. So thank you, Larry. Very good.
Terrific response. Thank you.
So again, if anyone has any questions, we have our first one. Our first question is, when is LA County Fire starting to inspect the Fish Canyon area? When can we expect to receive notice informing us our homes are cleared, informing us on what we need to resolve?
If you live in an area that's LA County does the inspections, you should have received your letter in the mail. Typically, it's right around June. The local fire station there is the ones that do the inspection. That is on Highland Avenue. It's Station 44. That's your local fire station. So the local engine company will come out and do the inspection. This year, they're going to try to leave a tag on every property, whether you be in compliance or non-compliance. So in the past, LA County Fire would come on your property, and if you were in compliance, you never received any notice. You wouldn't know. But now we're going to try to do it to where if once the engine company's on your property, they do the inspection, they'll leave a tag saying you are in compliance. Now, if they have found something that makes you in non-compliance of the county code, they will leave a door hanger that says what you need to address. You'll have 30 days to make that property in compliance. Then they'll come back for the second inspection. If you're still not in compliance, they'll do another 30 days and then come back. And then for the third inspection, if you're non-compliant, the county has the right to then have county ag come do the clearing for them, and then they will charge you on your taxes.
Thank you. Very thorough answer. Any other questions? Okay, this is a bit quieter group than I expected. Our presentations must have been really, really thorough.
Either that or we put everyone to sleep.
Right. Only goes one of two ways. I'm going to give it one more minute. I will say, so for all of our attendees, we will email out the slides. So you will get those directly to you, especially because, many of our organizations put up pretty critical contact information if you wanted to email or call with questions to them directly. But again, this will be on our YouTube page by next week, and then we'll also advertise it on social media. So if you know of anybody who needs some tips on how to home harden, create those safety kits, know how to contact the Department of Insurance, please be sharing that with them. Oh, there we go. One more Q&A. Nope. Someone. Oh, thank you. It was very informative. Great. And then we had Assistant Chief Moore say thank you. So that's true. It's a big thanks. Okay. We have Teresa. Teresa, I'm going to allow you to talk. So if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. One, because I'm in the Fish Canyon area and majority of a lot of issues in my section of Fish Canyon really are coming off the riverbed. That is mostly federal land. How is that being addressed? Because that is a huge fire risk and has been for years, and we have fought forever to try and get something done there.
Thank you. Do any of our panelists want to?
I don't have the map in front of me for Fish Canyon, but I know currently LA County Fire, we've got a fuels reduction project happening in Spinks Canyon. So the 3 steps to wildfire prevention really are your home, your defensible space, and then that area surrounding the community with the wildfire urban interface. So I think Fish Canyon has been looked at in the past, but currently we're looking at Spinks. I'm going to take notes for Fish Canyon, and I'm going to push it to my people in Fire Plan. They're the ones that identify the areas for project work to help reduce the risk to communities. And we always are looking for these strategic areas that will help protect the communities. So I'm taking notes for Fish Canyon.
And we also looks like have Chief Inman on this webinar as well. And he wrote defensible space inspections start May 1st or earlier, but people would have 30 days from May 1st to become compliant. So we have another answer coming from one of our participants because he knows it too.
Thank you, Chief Inman. Yeah, he's the local assistant chief. This is his area.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add in particular, I think it was into regards to possibly the riverbed area. A lot of that area, there's obviously a huge buffer between some of the residents and the riverbed, and there's also a concrete barrier. So there's a lot of things that go into the calculation as far as what needs to be weeded down and that sort of thing. But we are, from the city's perspective, as well as working with LA County Fire, we are working in unison to try to do the best we can to weed out that area, and they are actively doing that amongst some of the other issues in that area. So there's a lot of things to combat in that particular area just because they have wildlife issues, protected species that have created a habitat in that area. So that particular area is a little more difficult, but we are working on it very diligently on many respects. I hope that kind of bridges that gap there.
Thank you. We have
And
another.
I'll just add on quickly for the community wildfire protection plan that we're getting started. We were actually just talking about this with our consultants as we're preparing our stakeholder list of who needs to be involved and who needs to be in the conversation. And we were talking about making sure we're including the various levels of responsibility, whether that be federal or state or local or the county, for all of these different considerations with the land that your residences are near as well. So that's something we're definitely keeping in mind and thinking about. And as Assistant Chief Moore said, we're taking a note for sure of these locations that are particularly vulnerable.
Yeah, and typically in a CWPP, one of the phases is the community reach out. That's going to be a point where, the community will be involved. be able to voice their opinions, ideas, areas of concern. So projects can be identified by the locals. So that's just part of the step within the CWPP.
Excellent. We have another question here from Andrew. I'm going to allow you to talk. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I live on Sphinx Canyon, and for the past 7 years, I've complained about one of the major issues up here was that we have a single road egress, which is partially blocked by our friends who live in the city of Bradbury by traffic obstructions. I've complained for 5 years. I've complained to the fire department. I've complained to the city of Duarte. I've complained to the city of Bradbury, and those traffic obstructions still are present there, limiting the ability of the fire trucks to get up the street and limiting the ability of people to get down the street. We have 100 families that live up here and nothing's been done.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any comments on that? I know that this has been, because those comments have been received in the past, something that is on both the city and the county's radar and under discussion. I don't know if any of our panelists want to add anything to that, or that's sort of where things stand at this point, is it's all under evaluation.
Yeah, correct. The only thing I'll add to that is again in the city of Bradbury, so we don't have direct control over what he's speaking of, but we are digitally working with the city about those issues.
Okay. Any other questions from our participants today? All right. Well, thank you to everyone. It is 7:30, so very thorough presentations, very efficient group and questions. Thank you again for attending. Please share these materials when they're up. I think it's all useful information that people need. And many, many thanks to our panelists again for putting this together, putting these resources together, making yourself available. And hopefully we will see you in some, future events, whether city events, education events. But we appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank you so
Have a
everyone.
nice night.
Have a good
Thank
night.
Thank you.
Thank you.